I'm Joanna Small, the Public Information Officer for the Commerce City Police Department. It's Monday, June 9th, and these are your weekend high or lowlights, depending on how you look at them. This is essentially our video blotter, where we give you a rundown of the most significant incidents your CCPD patrol officers responded to over the weekend. But we always like to start these off with a few fast facts. We answered 388 calls for service and made 48 traffic stops just on Saturday and Sunday. Now, here are those highlights in chronological order. On Thursday, officers were called to Fire Station 23 because the victim of a robbery had walked there for help after being attacked and injured. When we arrived, we learned the victim had been assaulted and robbed of a significant amount of cash at East 62nd Avenue in Quebec after the assailant jumped out of a vehicle. He did have visible injuries to his face. Officers returned to the scene of the crime, but were unable to locate a suspect at that time. This incident has been assigned to a detective for further investigation. Overnight Thursday into Friday, officers were called to a fast food restaurant in the 6000 block of Parkway Drive for reports that a driver was slumped over the wheel of his vehicle with the vehicle still running. When we arrived, we found firefighters attempting to rouse the driver, whom we were eventually able to wake and have exit that vehicle. It was apparent the driver was under the influence of drugs and/or alcohol. We also found a meth pipe on his person. The driver is now facing charges for DUI, drugs, unlawful possession of a controlled substance, and possession of drug paraphernalia. That same shift of officers conducted a traffic stop on an ATV illegally operating on our roadways near East 48th Avenue and Newport Street and found a whole lot more than just a prohibited vehicle. The driver had no valid registration or insurance for the ATV, and a search of the vehicle yielded a large quantity of methamphetamine as well as the means to distribute it. The driver is now facing charges for the traffic violations as well as possession of a controlled substance and possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance. The ATV was impounded. Overnight Friday into Saturday, officers were called to another DUI driver asleep behind the wheel, this time in the 4900 block of East 64th Avenue at a gas pump. Officers woke up the driver, who then admitted to using methamphetamine. He also had needle caps in his driver's seat and explained he had just used the drugs before getting gas. As a result, the driver is now facing a DUI drugs charge as well as possession of drug paraphernalia and driving without a license charges. Now, you probably saw this next incident posted about on our social media platforms yesterday. On Saturday, officers conducted a traffic stop on a driver traveling 101 miles per hour in the 7400 block of Highway 2, where the posted speed limit is 35. They found the driver had a protection order against him and the protected party was his passenger. Therefore, he was jailed on the protection order violation and also faces charges for reckless endangerment, reckless driving, and speeding more than 40 miles over the limit. His vehicle was impounded. That same shift of officers responded to a transient issue in the 6900 block of East 54th Place and ended up recovering what was likely a stolen motorcycle. Officers found what appeared to be a shaved key in the ignition and discovered that all but the last two numbers of the bike's VIN had been filed off. Officers investigated and found a motorcycle stolen back in 2023 that matched the description of this bike. The suspect faces second-degree motor vehicle theft charges pending a VIN inspection. Our graveyard shift of officers who worked overnight Saturday into Sunday were extremely busy this past weekend. These next few incidents were all theirs. Officers were investigating an assault at the Clearview Motel on Highway 2 when they ended up witnessing an entirely separate second assault. A woman arrived on the scene and began punching a male in the face right in front of our detectives. We intervened and learned the woman was under the influence of drugs and alcohol and had driven to the location with her small child inside her vehicle. She is now facing DUI, child abuse, domestic violence, and harassment strikes, shoves, or kicks charges. Those officers also responded to a vehicle versus pedestrian hit-and-run collision in the 7100 block of Poplar Street that was on the bizarre side. It was called in by a witness, but when we arrived, we couldn't locate a victim or suspect, just evidence that a crash had in fact occurred. Shortly after, though, we found a vehicle that matched the description of the suspect vehicle, conducted a traffic stop, and confirmed the vehicle was indeed involved. The driver admitted she had been attempting to pick up her husband when he began throwing objects at her vehicle, and she then struck him with the vehicle. The victim got into another vehicle at the scene and left. The driver is now facing first-degree assault and domestic violence charges. Officers were also called to a felony menacing that occurred at the drive-in movie theater in the 8700 block of Rosemary Street. The suspect had become upset when the victims had apparently cut in line. He lifted up his shirt to reveal a firearm. When officers arrived, they recovered the firearm and took the suspect into custody without incident. He is now facing felony menacing and unlawfully carrying a concealed weapon charges. That's all for now. We'll see you next time. Have a safer week, Commerce City, and remember, if you need us, We are always just minutes away.